Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Steven Webb, and this is Stillness in the Storms podcast. And this week I'm talking about, can you be a healthy version of a people pleaser? It's an interesting one, actually, because we often see a people pleaser as somebody that is not good, not healthy. But I'm just wondering whether or not, because I'm a people pleaser, I tend to keep my mouth quiet and I don't tend to say what I really want to say. And I'll say yes and agree even if I don't really want to do it. And I can always remember my daughter saying to me quite often, like, you're a pushover. You let people do all these things, and you should stand up for yourself a little bit more. And to be quite honest, she's right. She's right to some degree. But not entirely, and I'm okay with some people, like, what it perceives to be walking all over me, but, I don't mind if I allow it. It's an interesting question. Is there such a thing as a healthy people pleaser? That's the question on today's podcast. So just before we get on with that, what's new? Well, I've been listening to a new podcast by Stephen Fry on Audible. I think it's only on Audible, but Inside Your Mind. And wow, it's just amazing. It's like, it really is the analytical way of seeing inside your mind. How does it work? How did it evolve? But also a part of psychology side of it. And it's only 12 episodes. He may do another season of it, but it's just brilliant. And in one episode, he asked the question, and I don't think he asked the question originally, but he quoted somebody else asking the question. And when I ask you this question, I want you to just give it a couple of seconds to let the question sink in, to see if you can reply to the question and see how your mind, observe what your mind does when I ask you this question. And here goes. Are you ready? Think of a brand new color, and then think of how you would explain that color. Did you notice the way your brain just goes, oh, I can't do that. I have no idea what to do with that. Your mind just totally goes blank. So you can try it again now. Think of a brand new color and then try to explain it. Well, of course, your mind cannot do it. It's like just impossible. Not like thinking up of a new word, because you can kind of do that. But your mind doesn't know how to think of a new color. So, yeah, that isn't what the podcast is about, but he mentions it halfway through. He talks about cave paintings that are like 40,000 years ago, where it may have been the Neanderthals that done it and not us. Just wow. It really is a great podcast. I highly recommend it. It's called Inside Your Mind by Stephen Fry, and it's only on Audible. It's not sponsored by them or anything like that. I'm not that lucky. What else is new? I've been invited to the garden party at Buckingham Palace. Me and the Mayoress, my daughter, are going on the 11th of May to Buckingham Palace. How awesome is that? So I'm going to be spending a few days in London, going up there on the Monday, taking a friend, and we're going to be hanging around London until Thursday. And then we got the Mayor's Golf Day, and then the Mayor's Day on Lemon Key. And it's going to be a really busy, crazy, brilliant, busy week. How excited is that? I remember my parents going years and years ago. Mum and Andy went years and years ago with Matthew Taylor, the MP. And I'm going now all these years later. So what else is new? I managed to get myself some dry roasted KP peanuts today. I don't know what's wrong with the shelves nowadays, but they seem to be empty. You cannot get original KP dry roasted peanuts anywhere. And my blood sugar levels are really down, and they're going really, really well. And I tend to have a little bowl of dry roasted peanuts every night. I know it's not the best thing for me, but I enjoy it. It's one of my sins. But let's get on with today's podcast. And we're asking the question, is there a healthy version of being a people pleaser? Is it okay to be a people pleaser? Now then, a little bit of background. I am a people pleaser. I really am. And at many times in my life, it has been in the detriment of what I've wanted. I've chose what other people want. Right down to I can meet with someone and they say like, "What we're going to have for my evening meal or our evening meal," and I'll look up and go, "Well, I don't mind. I'll have anything you want." And they'll go, "Right, well, I'll have this," and it might be something that I don't want, but I'll say yes and I'll have it just to not upset the apple cart. And that's what it is about being a people pleaser, isn't it? You don't ever want to upset the apple cart. You don't want to be disliked. You don't want anybody to say anything bad about you. You're devastated if someone doesn't like you. Well, I suffer from all of those things. It doesn't make any sense in what I do. Part of me is a politician, although we're all politicians in some way. But part of me is a politician. I'm the local mayor at the moment, and I'm the councillor for the Moresque and Treehaven ward. And, people say things sometimes that I am uncomfortable with, and I'm learning to deal with that. So, is it possible to be a healthy people pleaser? Well, let's look at what it means to be a people pleaser anyway. Let's look at the unhealthy version and then look at the healthy version, because I did a podcast on healthy and unhealthy and what words not to say, not what words to drop out of your vocabulary. And one of those words is good and bad. Things are not good or bad. We interpret them to be good or bad. In the scheme of the universe, that earthquake in the universe's eyes is not good nor bad. But if you're a human that's got a house on the side of that mountain where the earthquake's going to happen or landfall or whatever is going to happen, then it's a bad thing. So I say let's change good or bad to healthy or unhealthy. There's healthy way of eating, unhealthy. There's food that's healthy or unhealthy. There's anger that can be healthy or unhealthy. So instead of having good anger and bad and then labeling it and trying to get rid of certain things, that's where I'm coming from. That's really, and I'll put a link to that podcast down below. So what does it mean to be an unhealthy people pleaser? Well, I put a little list here and I'm going to go through the list. You avoid conflict. That's one of a people pleaser. That's a really big thing. Avoid it at all costs. Even if you get conflict sorted out, the other side of it could be really good, but you avoid it. You don't want to deal with it. They change who they are based on the situation. We'll literally sit down and, yeah, I'm into that. I'm into this, when really we're not. People pleasers don't really have boundaries. They don't set them, because if they set boundaries, they won't be able to step out of them. They won't be able to go over them because they have to do that to please people. They very often cannot say no. You may not be all of these things, but you may be a few of these things. I think everybody to some degree is a people pleaser. Whether it's in work or at home or to your children or whatever, we all can be, or we might be at a certain time. But we lose sight of who we are. We lack self-care. That's a very much unhealthy version of a people pleaser. Lack self-care. Don't look after ourselves. We'd rather look after somebody else than look after ourselves. Ain't that true? And we're always putting others first. Their choice, their thoughts, their opinion. We'll always go, yeah, I see your point, and we don't very often put our side. Okay, I don't recognize that part of me in a people pleaser, but certainly some of the rest. The problem is we then build up resentment. We really resent other people because they're pushing us around. But even worse, we resent ourselves because we know we shouldn't be doing that. We know we've been pushed around. We know that we should have made better choices. We should have put our boundaries in place. So we have more of a resentment for ourselves than anybody else. And that they lack self-joy, albeit they think they're happier because they're allowing people to do whatever and push all over them and walk all over them and things like that. But really, they do lack self-joy. and very much disconnect from everything. They think they're connected, they're part of it, they're really part of the gang and whatever's going on, but they're not. They're more disconnected than we realize. And because they cannot be honest and they cannot say what they really want and they don't have boundaries, they tend to lack honesty. So if someone asks them how they're doing, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. How are you really? Yeah, I'm really fine. So that they lack honesty, but it's not because they're dishonest, if that makes any sense whatsoever. That they're not lying intentionally, but that they're not telling the truth of what they really want. So if someone says, so what do you want for tea? It's like, yeah, I'm happy with either one of those options, when really they're not entirely happy with both options, but they would rather eat the option that they're not all that keen on just to keep the peace. They tend to agree a lot. They'll agree with people. Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're okay. Yeah, definitely. So, that's the unhealthy version of people pleasers. And I recognize a lot of that in me. I recognize a lot of that in me even now still. But instead of trying to get rid of the people pleaser, because what's the opposite to a people pleaser? Someone that doesn't care? I don't really know. I should have thought about this before the podcast, but what is the opposite to a people pleaser? Someone narcissistic, someone that puts themselves forward all the time, someone that never considers the feelings of others. Well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be someone like that. So being the opposite to a people pleaser isn't the option either. So it's a matter of finding a healthy balance between the two. And this is where I can ask the question, and if you ask yourself as well, what is a healthy version of a people pleaser? So when I'm looking at this list, like avoid conflict, a healthier version is they're okay with conflict. When it's narcissistic or dangerous or, too far, and any kind of conflict that may risk injury or something like that, I'm not saying be okay with that, but I'm saying be okay with an exchange of views. You can have a little conflict in a conversation. You can have a conflict of views. That's okay. It doesn't mean either you are necessarily 100% right, or it doesn't mean either you are 100% wrong. And instead of like changing who you are in this situation, things like that, accept yourself as okay. It's okay to feel different to them. It's okay to fit in one day and not fit in another day, because we have a change of heart. We have a change of opinion, things like that. Nothing's ever linear in a straight line. It's always got winds and turns. And I said about people pleasers have no boundaries or very little. Have some boundaries. Think of what your boundaries are. What won't you compromise on? I don't have a lot of boundaries and I find it hard to set them, but there's a few things I won't compromise on. I'll try not to compromise on my integrity, and I won't compromise on my freedom and my ability to make my own choices. And that comes down to the care, because I'm paralyzed just below the neck. I won't allow people to dictate to me what I can and cannot do when it comes to just everyday things in my life. Whereas most people would never consider that the kind of thing that I have to have someone do for me. And I won't compromise on how that's done, how I'm showered, things like that. Also, I won't compromise on being open-hearted and caring. No one's going to come in and tell me not to care. No one's going to make me that narcissist. I won't compromise on that. That is who I am. And no one's going to make me a non-people pleaser. I'm happy to be one. I'm just learning to be a healthy one. That's all. So yeah, have some boundaries. Have some set in stone things that you're not willing to compromise on. That's a good exercise. You could even write that down on a piece of paper. What 3 things will I not compromise on no matter what? Another thing I mentioned about you cannot say no, and you're losing sight of who you are and all that, because you won't say no to people. You'll end up doing things that other people want. Just practice saying no, especially first of all to the people close to you and your family and things like that. And you can even tell them, I'm practicing saying no. Can you allow me to say no to this suggestion, please? Explain to people. Nobody minds very often when you explain to them that it's a matter of, I'm trying this a little bit. If someone says, "How are you doing?" Instead of saying fine, you say, "Well, I'm practicing being honest. So I'm going to try to something that I've been trying recently, and that's to be more honest." And I've done a live on my Facebook the other day, and it come from Martha Beck, The Way of Integrity in the book. She is a year of being honest. And I thought, well, I'm pretty honest. But when she explains about like when someone says, "How are you doing?" I'm not that honest because I often say, "Yeah, I'm fine." And if they push me, I go, "Yeah, I'm really good." So I upgrade fine to really good just to get them off my back. Whereas really it's like, "How are you doing?" Deep breath. Well, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Right now I'm quite excited because I'm actually doing a podcast I haven't done for a while. My health is pretty good at the moment, so I'm kind of really upbeat. But I'm also feeling quite overwhelmed because we got a week ahead of us in the council and things like that. I have so many meetings this week. So the honest answer is, yeah, I'm feeling the pinch a little at the moment. So instead of being a people pleaser and just saying yes, you can actually be honest and say how you're feeling, which is another thing people pleasers don't say very often, or they'll mirror the other person's feelings. And I also mentioned about losing sight of who you are. You'll end up trying to fit into the gang, fit in with especially at school. You remember trying to fit in with either your geeky side or the really in crowd. Or perhaps I'm just projecting my schooling at the moment. I wasn't really in with either. I didn't know what I fitted in with, but I changed depending on who I hung around with that day. And so I was more proud of the gang and who they were. And I say gang lightly. What I mean is, the group, than I was myself. And I wasn't looking for the group that was similar to me. I was trying to change myself into the group. So be proud of who you are, stick your head up above the pulpit and say, "No, this is who I am," If you're a people pleaser, say, "Yeah, I am, but I'm a healthy one." So instead of putting others first, put yourself first sometimes. And again, really, I'm not going to go through the whole list. You get the point because every people pleaser is not the same. You're not the same as me. You won't do it the same way as I do. And you may not even be a people pleaser. And you may be just listening to this episode because you know a people pleaser. And I suppose the point I'm making is look at what a healthy version of you looks like. What does a healthy version of what you do look like? And instead of trying to change who you are, instead of trying to rewrite who you are based on the last self-help book you read, or the last YouTube video, or the last time a guru came in and give you some advice, just like I'm doing on this podcast, cast it all aside and just ask yourself, what would a healthy version of this look like? So you can be angry. What does a healthy version of angry look like? You can be anything you want, but what's the healthy version look like? It's not about getting rid of it. It's not about changing. It's not about getting rid of your people-pleasing tendency, that voice inside of you that wants to make others happy. I love that voice. I love the voice inside of me that does put others first sometimes, that does care about others, that has the compassion. And I think that's the wonderful qualities of a people-pleaser. Perhaps we should change it into a different phrase and call it something different. But I think we should be proud of it. And I think we should embrace it. And I think we just got to look at it in a healthy way. I'm Steven Webb, and this is Stillness in the Storms. And if you could leave a review, that'd be absolutely amazing. If you could share this podcast, it'd be absolutely amazing. And if you want to sign up for my newsletter, I'm doing something a little different. I'm always at a puzzle to what I'm going to do in my newsletter. So each week, I'm going to tell you what I'm listening to, what I'm reading, what's on my mind, and maybe even what I'm watching on Netflix. Just, that's what it's all about. And you can share with me because you can reply to my newsletter and it will come straight to me and tell me what you're reading and listening to. So I know that I'm currently listening to Inside Your Mind by Stephen Fry. Amazing series on Audible. And it's not sponsored by Audible, anything like that. I've got no sponsors for this podcast. So I'm not selling you anything. So take care. Have a wonderful week. Head over to stephenwebb.uk. Love you guys. You're awesome. And embrace your people-pleasing skills. Do it in a healthy way. Take care.